You walk through Constantinople in 1650. Incense and roast meat hang in the air. Drums thud from the palace quarter. Guards watch every gate. You admire stone, tile, and gold. Yet whispers follow you down the alley. They speak of rules that touch the body and the home. They speak of a system that breaks families and remakes loyalties. This is not rumor. This comes from records and witnesses. Clerks wrote it down. Envoys reported it. Survivors described it. The story is difficult. Many prefer the battles and the buildings. They skip the cost in human lives. But the paper trail remains in imperial ledgers and diplomatic files. Excavations add material proof. Population studies show traces. We are not judging modern states or any faith. We are reading what the people in power recorded about their own policies. That is our base. Who kept these lists and why? Hold that question. You notice the markets. Human bodies sell beside goods. You see palaces with rules for bedrooms, as strict as rules for taxes. You hear about boys sorted by age and skill. You hear about women priced by rank and origin. Administrators plan these movements the way they plan grain. The same offices track both. One truth keeps returning. Intimacy serves control. The empire in 1650 was a global force. It controlled routes, ports, and tribute. It ruled millions. It kept careful accounts of war and revenue. It also kept accounts of people taken, trained, and assigned to serve needs defined by the court. These were not random abuses. They were policies. They lasted across reigns. They survived reforms. Officials learned them, taught them, audited them, and defended them. This was policy, not accident. Writers at the time praised obedience and order. Jurists wrote opinions that fit the system into law. Chroniclers listed numbers with pride. They did not hide what they did. They normalized it. Over time, towns adjusted. Parents made plans to avoid selectors. Traders built routes around demand. Courts issued permits and fees. Armies counted captives as expected income. The stakes rose with each generation. The effect reached the household first. A child vanished. A wife sold. A son sent away and renamed. Then it reached the tax farm and the barracks. Then it reached the frontier. The state wanted labor, loyalty, and silence. It used separation, reward, and fear to get them. The design attacked the ties that resist power. Parent to child, spouse to spouse, neighbor to neighbor. Break those ties, and the subject stands alone with the state. Power liked measurable outputs. Revenue grew. Palaces expanded. Military units filled. Ledgers balanced. The system looked efficient on paper. The harm did not fit in a column. The harm lived in empty cradles and locked rooms. Observers wrote this down and still called it order. Foreign missions filed the same. They noted practices and called them custom. Trade mattered more than outrage. Profit muted protest. Why did diplomats accept it? Because access had a price. Two open questions now shape the path ahead. First, how did the state harvest people on such a scale and keep records that made it repeatable? Second, where inside the palace did these children and adults end up? And what rules governed their new lives? We will answer both. To do that, we start with the intake system that tore children from families and rebuilt them for service. Its logic was cold. Its reach was wide. Its methods were precise. The ledgers open. The officers arrive. Who do they choose next? Spring, 1648. A mountain village in the Balkans. Snow melts along the road. Officials arrive with ledgers, seals, and escorts. They set a table in the square. They read names. They measure height and teeth. They ask ages and test memory with short tasks. Parents stand back. A scribe writes each result in neat lines. The officer signs the page. A boy steps forward. Another follows. Numbers replace names by sunset. The collectors work by cycle. Registers from earlier years guide them. They note which districts gave boys last time. They estimate births from tax rolls. They compare losses from war and plague. They avoid only sons where orders allow. They prefer strong limbs and clear skin. They record hair and eye color. They note language and origin. They plan the march to the coast or to the next depot. The group forms in files of 10. The next cart arrives at dawn. 3 days later, on the road, the officers split languages. Greek here, Slavic there, Albanian elsewhere. Boys may not speak to kin. They receive new clothing. They surrender small charms and crosses. A clerk assigns each child a wooden tag. The tag shows batch, route, and destination. A guard explains the rules. No fights, no prayers in old forms, no names from home. A boy cries. A guard writes him up. The clerk records the infraction. Silence becomes rule number 1. At the first depot, the process tightens. Baths, hair cut close. A physician checks scars and hernias. A teacher begins drills. Basic Turkish terms, gestures for orders, posture in line. Food follows schedule, sleep follows watch. A letter goes to the village headman that the quota was met. The ledger closes with a balance and a stamp. The column for shortfall shows 0. This is how the state harvested people on repeat. 6 weeks later, near the capital, the group divides again. The brightest go to farms in Anatolia for language and faith instruction. They will live with households and learn obedience through work. The strongest go to barrack schools for basic arms drill and service tasks. A smaller group, marked for promise, enters a tighter stream toward palace training. The rarest path leads inside the inner service. Those files move under heavier guard. A new door waits behind the next courtyard. The training alters identity step by step. New names come first. A tutor issues a short list. The boy picks from it or receives one. He repeats it until it sticks. Old names cannot pass the gate. Language immersion follows. Turkish for orders, Arabic for scripture, Persian for court poetry and letters. Writing begins with copywork from approved texts. The tutor corrects with a reed pen and a short cane. The goal is speed and neatness. Order rests on repetition. Conversion is formal and recorded. A judge witnesses the statement of faith. The clerk enters the new name and date. The boy receives a small allowance and clothing marked with the school sign. He attends prayers with his group. He learns to stand, bow, and sit at cues. He memorizes rules on food, touch, and speech. The school punishes secret rituals from home. Informers receive favors. Obedience has its rewards. In the barrack schools, exercise joins study. March, lift, run, turn. The body changes first. In the countryside households, labor shapes the day. Plow, carry, sweep, serve. Letters come later. In both tracks, supervisors watch for talent and loyalty. Twice a year, inspectors arrive. They check ledgers. They promote or demote. They reassign boys to better masters or harsher tasks. A few move up to the palace stream. Who designed the rules inside the palace? That answer lies beyond the next gate. The march pauses at the outer wall. Drums sound from within. Lamps burn along the eaves. The file with selected boys steps forward. A steward counts them and signs the receipt. The officer hands over the tags. The door slides shut. What waits in the rooms beyond the second courtyard? They entered under guard. The steward counted again. A scribe noted batches, heights, and scars. The doors closed. The palace took over. Rooms lined the corridor. Lamps burned at set hours. Meals came by bell. Supervisors spoke little. Orders came on tablets and slips. Each boy learned his place within a day. Discipline came first. White eunuchs managed the school gates and studies. Black eunuchs managed the inner apartments. Stewards linked both sides to the chamberlains. The chief interpreter handled foreign letters. The treasurer paid allowances and fines. Each office kept its own book. Each book cross-checked the others. Petitions moved by route and stamp. Delay meant punishment. Nothing moved without record. The palace school trained the selected boys. The Enderan rooms taught language, writing, accounts, and court forms. Tutors drilled posture, dress, and silence. Senior pages set the pace. They watched for talent. They watched for weakness. They wrote notes for their superiors. A boy advanced if his notes matched the needs of the season. Watching was constant. Advancement opened doors. The pantry, the stables, the gardens, the treasury, the privy chamber. Each door meant access. Each access meant risk. Mistakes cost rank, pay, or food. Rewards came as cloth, coins, or placement with a powerful patron. A boy learned who spoke for him. He learned who listened. He learned when to bow and when to vanish. Patronage decided futures. The inner service had its own rhythm. Nurses, tutors, and senior women taught order in the women's quarter. Black eunuchs kept keys and lists. They scheduled visits, lessons, and messages. They controlled entries to private rooms. They briefed new staff on conduct near the royal family. They recorded every delivery. They logged every absence. Keys mattered more than titles. The boys marked for the deepest trust moved under tighter control. Their quarters stood closest to the heart of the palace. They learned decorum at a higher level, how to set a tray, how to read a glance, how to stand still, how to speak in 3 words instead of 10. Errors here did not fade from view. Errors here had witnesses of rank. Silence protected rank. Foreign envoys described the surface. They saw uniforms, ranks, and drills. They admired order and polish. They did not see the punishments carried out in side rooms. They did not see the lists that paired names with tasks beyond service or study. The state masked the private work behind public ritual. The result looked like obedience and calm. Appearances hid design. Selection for the inner stream started early. Supervisors flagged boys with striking faces, clear voices, easy manners, or fast recall. Physicians examined them again. Tailors took new measures. Tutors raised standards. The training shaped mind and body for responsiveness, for speed, and for quiet. A narrow set advanced from here. Why this narrow set and to what end? Not all routes led past the second courtyard. Many boys went to the barracks schools instead. There, they learned weapons, marching, and guard duty. They drilled without break. They learned unit rules and punishments. They ate in files and slept by roster. Loyalty to command defined reward. Rising from there took years and luck. 2 ladders, 2 destinies. Inside the palace, rank rose by tests of trust. Trials included carrying sensitive messages, guarding doors at night, serving banquets, and managing small sums. A few faced assignments without witnesses or receipts. Their supervisors signed for outcomes, not steps. The boys learned that some work did not enter the formal books. What kind of work leaves no trace? The hierarchy kept one more separation. White eunuchs stood between schools and outer offices. Black eunuchs stood between the outer offices and the private rooms. Chiefs of both groups met with high officials. They planned placements with care. They cited health, skill, and temperament. They cited safety. Safety for whom? A pattern emerges at this point. The palace shaped children into instruments, then divided those instruments by access to bodies and rooms. The records report duties and ranks. They avoid plain terms for certain tasks. The euphemisms repeat. The ledgers grow thicker. The pattern tightens. A door opens deeper inside. At the threshold stands the rule that unlocks the rest. The court did not only train service and loyalty. It managed intimacy as a department of state. Which bodies approached which doors, under which rules, and for whose benefit. That rule ordered the rooms that lay ahead. What does that rule require of the youngest recruits? The rule required control of bodies as state business. It assigned access like pay. It logged touch like tax. Clerks kept a separate register for the inner rooms. Entries used short codes. A date, a room mark, 2 initials for staff on duty, a note on conduct. The pages looked like any other book of the palace. They tracked linen, lamps, trays, and people. Superiors reviewed them weekly. Errors meant fines or removal. Numbers stood for names. White eunuchs managed selection and training in the schools. Black eunuchs managed keys and schedules in the private wing. Courtiers sent requests through them. A request might ask for a reader, a singer, a companion for a walk, a server for a night watch. The wording stayed bland. The effect was clear. Senior officials knew which door led to which service, and which boy stood behind it. Euphemism covered direct command. The palace also needed men made safe for the women's wing. Eunuchs filled those posts. The state did not perform the operation inside the capital. Intermediaries procured boys already altered or hired non-Muslim specialists beyond the core provinces. Mortality was high. The records note losses in dry terms. Surviving eunuchs entered the service with rank, ration, and a clear chain of command. Some rose to great power. Keys could move policy. Pages trained for responsiveness. Tutors drilled posture and speed. Stewards timed steps between bell and door. Supervisors graded voice control, eye contact, and calm. Praise and reward followed quick compliance. Rebuke and isolation followed delay. The ideal servant anticipated, did not ask, and did not speak first. Advancement depended on this. Silence earned promotion. Inspectors paired boys to senior sponsors. Sponsors signed monthly notes on behavior, learning, and demeanor in private settings. The notes avoided plain words. They used fixed phrases. Pleasant, steady, pliable, apt for near service. A cross in the margin meant caution. A dot meant hold for review. A star meant move forward. These marks opened doors. Who made the marks and why those boys? The bureaucracy pulled from many sources. Rural households, barrack schools, bought captives, gifts from provincial governors. The machine did not rely on one stream. That kept supply constant. Receipts show prices and fees, transport costs, clothing, training, medical care. The balance sheet treated people like stock on hand and stock in use. One promise drove compliance. Patronage could lift a page to office. Some former pages became interpreters, stewards, or governors. Stories of rise spread back to villages. Parents saw chance inside the terror. Sponsors used that hope as leverage. Serve well. Advance. Forget the past. Gain a salary and a seal. The message repeated at every gate. Hope masked the cost. The army had its own channel. Barrack schools produced soldiers bound by strict celibacy rules. Units lived under supervision. They built loyalty through drill and reward. They policed conduct with fines and lashes. Orders limited family ties. Commanders preferred soldiers whose first bond was to the corps and the ruler. The goal matched the palace. Break old ties, bind new ones to the center. Two engines ran in step. Foreign envoys learned the outer rules. They traded gifts to gain access. They knew which officers to court. They reported what they saw. Many reports described banquets, gardens, and order. Few described the coded registers. Access required silence. Silence bought trade. What happened when a boy refused? That question waits. One case appeared often in the books. A bright village boy, taken at 12, quick with languages, placed in the palace stream at 15. Sponsors marked him apt for near service. He passed tests with speed. He learned faces, signals, and routes. He kept pace at night duties, his file filled with stars. Then a mark changed. A cross appeared beside his name. A test stood ahead. He received a sealed order. He was to serve during a private vigil. He was to follow the steward's cues. He was to keep record of nothing. He signed the receipt with his new name. He washed. He changed to finer cloth. He waited outside a small room near the inner court. Lamps burned low. A bell sounded once. The steward turned the key. What rule would the boy obey now? He stood outside the door. Oil smoked from the lamp. The tile felt cold through thin soles. Linen scratched at his neck. Sweat ran along his back. The steward held the key and watched his face. Time moved in counted breaths. A bell sounded once. The steward nodded. A black eunuch checked the list. He pointed to the line with the boy's new name. The code matched the room mark. The steward lifted the latch. The boy did not move. The eunuch waited. The corridor stayed quiet. Refusal began as stillness. The steward spoke first. "Follow the order." The boy said, "Assign me to the pantry." The words came low. He did not look up. The steward's mouth did not change. The eunuch tapped the list with a nail. The steward repeated, "Follow the order." The boy stayed still. Silence turned heavy. He asked for transfer to the barracks school. He named his sponsor. He named his tests. He said he could march and count. He said he would work nights at the gate. The steward listened. The eunuch did not mark the page. The bell sounded again. Choice shrank to one step. The steward signaled the guard. The guard stepped close. The boy flinched but held his ground. The steward lowered his hand. He said, "You know the rule." The boy answered, "I know the ledgers." He raised his eyes. He spoke his birth name once. The corridor swallowed the sound. Names carried risk. The eunuch wrote a small cross beside his line. He added a dot. He closed the board. He said, "Remove him." The guard took the boy by the arm. No blows yet, no shouts. The door stayed closed. The lamp hissed. The key did not turn. Some punishments leave no bruise. They led him to the discipline room. A clerk waited with a thin book. The clerk read the charge: delay, disobedience, breach of form. The steward signed. The boy did not answer. The clerk wrote the number for lashes. The count matched rules for a first refusal. The guard tied the boy's wrists to a low bar. Rules speak through numbers. The lashes fell on cloth. The guard kept count. The steward watched for any cry. The boy bit the inside of his cheek. He tasted iron. He leaned into the rope. He did not speak. The clerk wrote, "Carried with firmness." The steward did not look at the boy's face. Records preferred short lines. After the count, the guard cut the rope. The clerk wrote the reassignment. Kitchen ash pit for 1 month. Night watch at the garden gate for 2. Removal from near service. Loss of allowance for a quarter. Sponsor note required. The steward pressed the seal. The eunuch signed as witness. The boy stood with effort. Refusal had a ledger. They took him to the bath to wash the back. Salt stung the cuts. The water ran pink, then clear. A nurse tied strips of cloth. She said nothing. He dressed in rougher linen. He received a new badge. The steward returned his wooden tag with a different mark. Rank can fall in a breath. Later that night, the vigil proceeded with another page. The register filled without gaps. The door closed and opened on time. The euphemisms held. The week ended. The review passed. The machine did not slow. The boy carried ash and lifted buckets. He learned the route to the gate in the dark. The system absorbed refusal. Months passed under the new schedule. He kept the rules. He spoke little. His sponsor sent a short note. Steady, obedient, apt for outer service. A star appeared beside his name. The cross remained. The eunuch did not erase it. The steward returned his gaze in corridors, but did not stop him. Some marks never fade. One night at the garden gate, he checked seals and counted trays. He saw his old filemate pass with a new badge. The boy walked fast and did not look up. The black eunuch led the line. The door to the inner rooms opened and closed. The bell sounded once. The garden smelled of damp earth and oil. He knew where the line would end. The clerk called for his statement next morning. The book lay open. The clerk asked, "Will you request review for return to near service?" The boy looked at the page. He saw the cross and the dot and the star. He thought of the bell, and the key and the cold tile. What answer would he sign? He read the page. He saw the cross and the dot and the star. He asked for outer service and signed his name. The clerk wrote, "Approved." The steward stamped the seal. The review ended in 1 minute. A choice closed without noise. Weeks passed. He worked nights at the gate and days in stores. He counted sacks and sealed crates. He logged deliveries from kitchens and gardens. He learned faces of messengers and guards. He kept to rules and kept to time. Routine can hold a life. In autumn, his sponsor wrote again. Steady, fit for records. He moved to a small office near the second courtyard. He copied letters and tallied rations. He handled petitions about pay and cloth. His work had numbers and stamps. His work left marks in books that others could read. A ledger gave him cover. He met old schoolmates by chance on corridors. Some wore new badges and fine belts. Some walked with black eunuchs toward the inner rooms. They did not speak. He did not speak. The bell rang beyond the screen. He kept his eyes on the page. Silence kept peace. The eunuchs kept the keys. The same men who had closed one door now opened others. They moved staff, set schedules, and watched for breaches. Their notes reached the chiefs each week. Punishment stayed within rules. Rewards followed rank and need. The codes continued to veil tasks that no one wrote in plain words. Records hid what rooms required. 2 winters later, inspectors reviewed outer offices. They praised his neat accounts. They posted him to a provincial treasury. He left the palace with a small chest, a letter of introduction, and a clear status. His file still held the cross. It did not block his path. It reminded him of a locked door. Marks can guide without binding. In the province, he learned land rolls and levies. He reconciled weights and measures. He paid wages to garrisons. He marked shortages and waste. He sent reports by fixed dates. He kept his head down and his books clean. He married a local widow with 2 children. He built a home by the market gate. Years can blur the first choice. News from the capital reached him by caravan. New reign. New chief of the black eunuchs. Changes in the inner rooms. A purge of the barrack schools after a mutiny. He wrote no comments. He filed the letter and turned to his sums. He balanced the month and sealed the packet. Distance made work simple. Now and then, a boy from his region arrived as a new recruit. The boy carried a wooden tag and a blank face. He showed his orders and sought the next post. The man checked the tag and signed the receipt. He gave water and bread. He told the guard the road to the depot. He did not ask for the boy's old name. He knew why the tag had no past. The question left at the gate had an answer. He chose the outer path and never sought return. He learned that refusal did not stop the system. It only changed his line in the books. He could live, serve, and build a household. He could not unmake the rule inside the walls. Some doors stay closed for a reason. He wrote his will in clear terms. He left his tools to his stepson. He left coins for the poor box. He asked for a simple burial. He sealed the will and placed it in the court chest. He walked home by the wall at dusk. Lamps burned behind stone. The bell sounded once. He kept walking. He knew what that bell still meant. Years later, his stepson asked about the scar lines on his back. He answered that they taught him to stand straight. He said no more. He sent the young man to the tax school. He taught him how to total a column and check a seal. He taught him when to speak and when to write. He passed on skills, not stories. And you stand now at that same wall in your mind. You hear the bell and smell the oil. You feel the tile under your feet. You see the ledger with its crosses and stars. You know which choice he signed and why he chose it. You also know what stayed behind the door. Document the record, not the rumor. If this history matters to you, share it, save it, and ask for the next archive.